Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Rise panel today. We're just going to continue just wait to get some more people in the room. Today is going to count for 1 hour of CLE credit. That information will be posted in the chat before the presentation really starts and then after. We appreciate that you guys stay and listen to everyone who is being vulnerable and sharing their perspectives on what they have experienced with depression in the legal field and being willing to just be open and try to help with changing that stigma as well. We have a few panelists here that you may be familiar with and may not be familiar with. We have Justice Ken Molberg. He was elected to the 5th District of Appeals in November of 2018. Prior to that, he served as a judge for the 95th Judicial District. And then he is a SMU law grad and he was a trial lawyer for more than 33 years. Shatai Joyner is from Des Moines, Iowa. She's a licensed mental health counselor and she's certified alcohol and drug counselor as well. She hosts a podcast and is the founder of the podcast, Unashamed and Unapologetic, the mental unhealth podcast. I was actually featured on that, and I know I sent it around to a few of you. She wants to really make sure that she helps with destigmatizing mental health and ensuring that people are getting the assistance that they need. Then we have Mr. Michael K. Hurst. He is a partner at Lynn Pinker, Hurst, and Schwegman. He was named a Lawyer of the Year, a top lawyer, 100 lawyers in Texas. He has been recognized as a benchmark litigation star, board certified civil trial law, and he was then named an outstanding mentor for DAYL and as well as the Texas Young Lawyers Association. Then we have Miss Erica Grigg. Law students may know her as someone that comes and talks to you in the beginning of your first year or before you go take the bar. She is a lead TLAP professional. Previous to that, she used to work as a plaintiff's attorney. During her career, she's a UT Law grad, and she recently received her master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Lamar University. Then we also have, who's going to help me today, is Whitney. She is the DAYL president of this year. She currently works with a firm in family law, and I will let her make a brief statement.
Everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's panel discussion on depression. This is a program that the DAYL started this year, really revolving around mental health. And our objectives are not only to remove the stigma regarding mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, addiction, things like that, but also to provide resources for our members. And we really have a mission to normalize it so people can seek treatment. And so we can really get help before it becomes an issue. And so I think really the best way to start off this panel discussion is to have Shatai Joyner, who is our mental health professional today, really tell us about depression, how it affects the brain, our actions, and is there really a one-size-fits-all look for depression? I mean, we all have kind of the stereotype in mind of what depression looks like, but can you tell us a little bit, Shatai, about in your practice and in your experience, what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So what is depression, right? There is definitely not a one size fits all. It can look different for everyone. It can be mild to severe. It can be seasonal. It can present itself at times of grief. But in a nutshell, depression is a continuous feeling of sadness, loss of interest in things that you would normally do, isolation. Some of the signs of depression are trouble sleeping, whether that's falling asleep, staying asleep, change in appetite, overeating, not eating, fatigue, just feeling exhausted for no apparent reason, feeling hopeless, worthless, extreme feelings of guilt, thoughts of self-harm or, suicidal thoughts. And typically for depression, these signs have to be present at least 2 weeks, but they definitely are there typically longer than that. What happens in the brain when you are experiencing depression is your brain is getting a flood of what is called cortisol, or the stress hormone, and it affects different parts of your brain. So it affects the hippocampus, which is responsible for like memory and concentration, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your decision making, for social behavior, for your attention. Also the amygdala, it processes like dangerous situations and kind of determines what is a threat. It's responsible for different emotions like fear, anger, sadness. It's that, if you're familiar with the fight or flight response, it takes place in the amygdala. So really, depression affects so many different parts of the brain, and it hinders your ability to process, think rationally, and make rational decisions. But what that looks like, it can be on different scales of severity. So we're pretty much all familiar with the I can't get out of bed, I'm crying a lot, I don't want to be around people. But what we don't talk about as much is the what we call maybe more high functional depression or long-term depression, where it might seem you can get out of bed, you can go to work, but you just have this feeling of emptiness, this feeling of hopelessness. I'm not doing anything right. I'm a failure, things like that. And it can really lead to just irrational thought processes of what we call in therapy filters or cognitive distortions. We're all familiar with like Snapchat filters. You put the eyelash filter on and then that's how you see yourself and everyone around you. So we can have negative filters as well. So in depression, a lot of times you might have thoughts of, everything I do, I'm a failure at. I can't do anything right. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares. And, those are irrational because what we know is there's never all or nothing. It's never nobody loves you. It's never you fail at everything. But that's kind of the narrative we play to ourselves in our minds. And that fuels that depression.
And you talked about high functioning, I guess people with who are high functioning but have depression. And so you and I were kind of talking, all the panelists were talking that, that was my personal experience, is that when I was living with depression and when I got the diagnosis of major depressive disorder, that for me, I kept pushing off seeing a counselor. I kept pushing off getting on medication because I could survive. I mean, I wasn't thriving, but I could survive without it. And then once I kind of hit a wall and things kept really stacking up is when I finally got help. So as a professional, is it your recommendation really that if you're having those 2 weeks or more of these irrational thoughts, of these difficulties, but you're still functioning, you're still going to work, you're still getting things done, that maybe at that point is really when you should be talking to friends, family, and seeing if seeing a counselor is maybe something proactive that you can do?
Absolutely. And just like you said, you were surviving, but not thriving. So we can only survive for so long before we hit a wall. And then when we do hit that wall, it can be very intense. And that's when it's not high functioning anymore. So doing those preventative steps and talking about it, even, talking before you take that step to talk to a professional, just being open with your support team, your family, your friends, your colleagues on what's going on a daily basis, while it is still kind of mild. And that's kind of that self-care.
And Michael, I know that Whitney just spoke to her depression and what she's experienced. Or is there any experiences that you have had with depression, and how has that manifested for you and affected you during your career?
Thanks, Artishula. I think it's no secret that I've suffered and continue to suffer to some extent from depression. I think I made that pretty clear during my Dallas Bar presidential year in 2018. I think what Whitney said, high functioning, is probably a pretty good description. I think it would be easy for me to say that it was simply situational depression, but because of its duration, which is years, it's been more chronic. By 2017, 4 years ago, I was already in therapy discussing life's transitions, and my therapist saw me sinking. And the more I worked with my therapist so that I could make decisions in my life, the more I found that I was stuck. internally resistant, and not just about making changes, but my mood and my depression kept me from acting on my behalf. So I think, like many attorneys, like y'all have just described, I felt my life was a facade. I felt that I was projecting. What I was projecting was, in my therapist's words, incongruent with who I really was. That I was keeping a life that I built, but didn't have complete fulfillment, and even anywhere close to it. And this, as my therapist said, this incongruency is really something that all lawyers, especially young lawyers, need to watch out for. And that is having this high level of awareness where your life might be off, or what it is that you know that you need or know that you want. But you're living a life in a way that just completely disregards this awareness. And really, through therapy, which is something that, I mean, I owe such a great debt of gratitude to the therapists that I've had. I realized that I was really, really proficient with this masquerade. Does that sound familiar? And it was working, and I was succeeding, but at a great emotional cost, psychologically, spiritually, and that was the cost of living a script.
And depression is a situation that happens throughout life, but I know a lot of people have seen it more on a bigger scale with the ugly P word we have to use with the pandemic and COVID. Erica, what have you seen just through TLAP or through your personal experiences with mental health and depression going through COVID?
Yes, and this is my own experience and at TLAP. This pandemic year, the P word, I call it Quaranfinity. Everybody has been touched by this point with some sort of level of depression, mood disorder, or anxiety. It's been an unprecedented year. We have been asked to be professionals, our children's teachers. Some of us are taking care of our parents. I mean, it's just been this unprecedented call. And something, that's really interesting that the research is coming out about this is this concept, and Shatai may know it, called surge capacity. And what surge capacity is, and it's how a lot of humans, certainly this one right here, respond to crisis. And that is, we do it when we're preparing for a trial. We did it when we were preparing for a final. We were like, okay, this is going to really be tough for the next week, but I can hang in there for a week and I can operate at this super intense level. I can get no sleep. I can study for that final. I can work, get no sleep for 1 week and try this case, and then it'll be okay. That's kind of how we approached the pandemic at first. A lot of us, I didn't know we'd be here a year and a half later. We were like, all right, this is going to be a tough 2 months. And so we had that surge capacity of, okay, I'm going to rally. I'm going to operate at this, intense level. I'm going to be the teacher, be the lawyer, be the caretaker for my parents, be worried about my parents getting their vaccine. We just operated at that. Even as lawyers, we're already super intense and operating at a level like that's critical. We increased that, and we kept doing that. Like, okay, one more week. Okay, one more week. Okay, and then we're just like, So what we have found is, as Shatai was referring to, that cortisol buildup, all of that. So here we are, exhausted. Those of us that functioned well before, that have never dealt with depression or anxiety before a lot of us are dealing with that now. Those of us that are experienced with depression and anxiety, what we were doing maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, the meds we were taking, the therapy we were taking, our baseline might have changed. And so because of this surge capacity and this use of, that cortisol and that stress response. And so what we're seeing at TLAP is, it is an unprecedented amount of people, a part of our profession, who are experiencing depression and anxiety now. And even those that were experiencing it before, that had a great game plan that was working, like me, my meds had to be increased because, the level where I was, I love, I'm a Lexapro Go professional. person, and I had to increase that amount. That's because my baseline changed because of what I was facing. So that's what I can speak to as far as my own experience and also the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program.
And Justice Mulberg, I mean, depression happened before the pandemic and after. How are you seeing this with attorneys who are approaching your courtroom? And how are you reaching out to assist those that you do see are struggling pre and post pandemic?
Well, even before the pandemic, which exacerbated the situation immensely, I saw, particularly on the district court, what I believed as a non-professional in the mental health area was a very high incidence of depression-related conduct. Let me put it that way, which often manifests itself in neglect, characterized by, you can see within people at times, I guess what the French call ennui, a weariness, emptiness, almost hopelessness, and doing things because they need to be done, but even then not doing them well, and sometimes not doing them at all. One of the things that I think is very important is for people to understand that there are resources out there, that there are an immense amount of success stories. And one of the ways that we get there, we're good at normalizing physical impairment, or we're at least better at it, but we're still stigmatizing mental health issues. And in my view, we cannot continue with this. For example, while on the district bench, I can tell you that I made 4 referrals to Erica's wonderful organization, TLAP. I saw behavior uncharacteristic of the person that I knew. And I knew something was wrong, and I suspected it. And I know firsthand that 3 out of 4 of those were success stories. And I don't know if they would have all been success stories if I hadn't made a referral. So yes, we see it. We need to recognize that our profession has a high incidence of depression. We need to come into our profession knowing that, and we have to know what tools to use to obviate it, eliminate it.
I just really want to echo what you said, Justice Mulberg, because I appreciate the tone of that message, which is having depression, whether it's a formal diagnosis or not, is not a death sentence to your career. It's not something that people should be ashamed of. Like Shatai and Erica were talking about, the true physiological impacts of something like that and getting the help that you need. We're all here being open about it. And Erica and I were talking about how some people are comfortable being open about their journey with depression. Others aren't, and that's okay. But it's also really important to know that getting that diagnosis doesn't have to be a negative thing. In fact, for me personally, getting on medication and going to therapy made me a more successful attorney. It made me a better wife. It made me a better person with my colleagues. And having that self-awareness and having that recognition of what I live with on a daily basis, and in really crazy, unprecedented times like this pandemic, just having the ability to know what I'm dealing with has been really empowering. And there are so many success stories like Michael, like myself, like Erica, that follow that diagnosis. And so I appreciate being able to have a judge on the panel and other individuals here who are so well respected in our community speaking openly about that. And I think, Michael, you wanted to say something too.
I was just going to add to that, Whitney. Very well said, Justice Mulberg. Very well said. It's not lost on me that somebody of your stature, Justice Mulberg's stature, who've got the skins on the wall already, can talk about this much more easily than young lawyers can, that feel like their careers are required to dictate that they've got to be macho and they've got to be strong, and that clients or partners don't want to see them have that vulnerability, and that's really something we've got to face. Why is it that that you can talk about, or I could talk about something like depression and how it's affected us, but does that really make it more comfortable for, a second or third year lawyer to do the same?
Absolutely. I think that a huge part of it is changing the culture in which we practice. And I think it starts with us, and hopefully we can influence on other people's behavior. I know that with my firm, I have been very open about my journey, and that has, it's been very encouraging because I've had younger attorneys at my firm reach out to me and talk to me and know that, okay, there is somebody here that I can talk to that can empathize and that is an ally. And I think we have to be allies for our colleagues, and not just the people that we work with, but also opposing counsel and our clients. And that's what really leads to that change. And so speaking of our clients, I do, in order for us to get the ethics credit, need to talk just a little bit about some of the rules that I do feel that mental health impacts for all of us in practice. And so obviously we're all familiar with competent and diligent representation of clients. And Justice Mulberg really touched on this in what he has seen personally in his courtroom, and has probably led to some of the referrals to TLAP, which is that kind of weariness that depression will create. And I often see it too in the form of avoidance, that sometimes that's what can affect competent and diligent representation, that you get so, I don't want to use the word paranoid, but with that distortion of reality that we've talked about, you're almost so afraid that you become fearful and you become depressed, and you don't want to respond. You don't want to address the problem because you're already forecasting worst case scenario in your head. And obviously as lawyers, we can't do that. We need to fervently represent our clients. And a lot of times that means self-care. So Justice Mulberg, how have you seen people perhaps run across the competency rule in the courtroom, or even on Zoom now in the pandemic, with respect to depression? How do you tend to see that manifest itself?
Well, it manifests itself, and I think I referred to the word neglect earlier, and I don't mean pure negligence. It's a conscious neglect. It's almost, at least in my view, and Ms. Joyner can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost an inability to meet the moment. And to me, when I've witnessed what I believe was true depression, often complicated by alcohol and drug use, likely, the people I referred to, they were no longer characteristic of what I knew them to be. And it was readily apparent that there was something wrong. And given our profession, I as a layman put two and two together and figured that this is what, in fact, it was. Of course, I'm no stranger to depression. And this pandemic has, like I said, made it worse for all of us. I don't know a colleague on the Fifth Court of Appeals or anyone who is in my life who has not been negatively affected by this, either in terms of anxiety, low-level depression, moderate depression, or major depressive disorder. So, it manifests itself in just more than lawyer procrastination, so to speak. It's like dropping the ball or an actual inability to do it because your makeup is not allowing you anymore to do it. The filter is not allowing you to do it.
And so I'm curious, from Shatai's perspective, when somebody does kind of have this paralysis and this inability to respond and kind of meet the call of duty of being a lawyer in this case, how can someone manage themselves through that, Shatai? Are there any kind of tips and tricks to ensuring that real obligations don't get missed when experiencing these depressive either episodes or a major depressive disorder and managing through it?
Absolutely. So the most important thing is to just know yourself, knowing what your warning signs are for depression. And that, going back to that, there's no one size fits all. You know, what are your triggers? What can you avoid? Alcohol, excessive alcohol use, you know, during stressful times, drug use, knowing yourself. Okay, it's been about a week. I usually run every day and I haven't ran at all last week. Okay, it's kind of a warning sign. Okay, I skipped a few meals. I haven't slept. So really knowing yourself is very important, because then you can catch those red flags before they become too intense. So just keeping that mental note of that, avoiding things that trigger you. You know, if it's a person, if it's a place, if it's stressful situations, plan ahead for that. You know, sometimes family can be very triggering. If you have something big coming up at work, and you know, anytime you go back home for a gathering, it's just too much, then, you know, skip out on that if you know that it could affect you later on. Having a safety plan. In the therapy world, we call them safety plans, but just kind of like a care plan. So I know my warning signs, I know my triggers. If these happen, what can I do? I know that if I am feeling down, if I'm feeling a lot of stress or a lot of sadness, going for a run. Or do I have a go-to friend that isn't going to add to the negativity, isn't going to try and preach to me, tell me what I need to be doing? Do I have somebody who is a healthy support that I can call? Do I have a therapist? Even if you don't go weekly, do you have one? So if you need to schedule additional sessions, can you call and do that? Just self-care things, you know, taking care of your sleep hygiene, your nutrition, having a balanced diet, making sure you are prioritizing yourself first and foremost, because you are not going to be, essentially, you're going to be useless if you are not able to take care of yourself. You can only keep up the charade, you can only put on the face, you can only go at 300% for so long, right? And, you know, in the profession of law, you know, you're helping other people as well. You're representing other people. You cannot pour into other people from an empty cup. So it's very important to do those things on a regular basis that take care of you. Also remembering that, you know, depression and feelings are temporary. Nothing lasts forever. So while you may be in a depressive episode or going through a depressive state, just knowing that it doesn't last forever. No matter how intense it feels, it's temporary. And having all of those tools can really help you through that. And definitely knowing when to ask for help, knowing when you have too much on your plate, knowing when you just need to say no to an obligation, or when you need to go to a colleague or somebody and say, hey, I need taken off this case. I need help with this case. I need help in general. I need to take a break. And that is a huge sign of strength, and definitely not weakness. Taking on more than you can chew is going to get you caught up, and it's going to increase all of those feelings of, oh, I'm failing, I can't do anything right, I'm feeling guilty, when just sometimes just taking a break is like, whew, okay, let me regroup, let me refresh, and come back bigger and better.
And I think that that's so important to highlight, in the sense of asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And one of our other duties as attorneys is obviously to keep our clients informed and have an open line of communication with our clients. And I think we talked a little bit about those avoidance behaviors, that sometimes that can probably negatively impact our ability to communicate with our clients if we are having a depressive episode. And so just to normalize that a little bit, Michael, how do you believe that depression can impact either your relationships or your colleagues' relationships with clients, kind of especially on those tough days when you don't want to get out of bed, you just don't want to deal with it?
So I want to start off by kind of dialing in on something that Shatai just said. One of the things that I have noted as a, now, I guess, for better or for worse, a veteran of depression, the realization that things are only temporary, and that everybody comes out of it, that every storm ends at some point. Being in the thick of depression is one of the hardest things in the world to see. you think that your world has changed permanently and you don't feel like you can, that there really is going to be an end to the storm. You know, you just can't see it. And so that's something to know that, and I would echo what Shatai says, every storm does end, but you don't know when, but it will end. In answer to your question, Whitney, first, experiencing depression at any level is debilitating, or can be, but it becomes compounded and outright dangerous if you're going at it alone. So what Shatai just discussed a minute ago about safety plans, I would say the most important as it relates to dealing with your clients is making sure that you have established allies, confidants, and friends with whom you can talk. That is step one. Someone who's outside your bubble, that knows to what extent that you need a little extra help, that somebody that you've been able to confide in or be able to discuss. Somebody that can notify your clients, the court. Well, first of all, you, to the extent you're able, need to notify your clients, the court, your work colleagues, your opposing counsel, that you've fallen ill on a particular day. You don't need to give all the details, but much as you would as if you come down with the flu. But if it gets to a point where you can't even do that, then you need to be able to check in with someone you trust. And it could be a secretary, a fellow lawyer, a mentor, a family member, or a friend, someone who's plugged in and who's looking out for you. With depression, our tendency is to isolate. You mentioned not getting out of bed. That's not uncommon, and that is the worst, to isolate. It puts you in danger to yourself, and it also puts you at risk of not being able to fulfill your obligations to your clients to do their work and to keep them informed. So, if I've got time, I'd like to talk, just by way of example, of 3 allies, probably when I was in my darkest days, of people that really helps me in that regard. Different reasons and different people. My mom checked in with me every day, and at one point, as part of her hard love, she told me she hardly recognized me and boldly said, "Michael, you've got to come out of this at least temporarily to help people out. Put on your fancy suits, keep your head up, and act like the badass lawyer that you are." Second person was my mixed martial arts trainer. And this is to Shatai's point about exercise being so important. When I ran or I would bike, that was a lot of downtime. And that was a lot of downtime to get lost in my thoughts. And getting lost in my thoughts was not necessarily a good place for me to be. And when I was boxing and having to worry about if I don't slip or roll when I'm supposed to, then I'm probably gonna get hit in the face. And then, after 45 minutes walking out, just covered with sweat and completely physically exhausted, but I never felt any better. And the third example I want to give is somebody that many of you know, which is my close friend and former law partner, Sean Brown, who checked on me every day and got together with me. And I remember she sent me this sermon from her pastor. And it was great. It may have been a little bit hokey, but it was something that resonated with me then and still resonates with me today. Her pastor brought out this grill into the church, a big old giant grill, that you cook steaks on. And he brought out a raw piece of meat, and he said, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a steak. It's beautiful. It's marbled. It's something that looks great, but what's it missing? Well, in order for the flavors to come out and for it to really experience its best, it's got to go through the fire. And going through the fire was a metaphor, biblically and metaphorically, that essentially says, you're stronger for your experiences. You're not in the fire alone. And Sean would call me almost daily, and she'd say, "Michael, how hot is the fire today?" And I'd say, "Sean, it's pretty hot." But there were times where I said, what? I feel like the fire's getting a little less hot. Like maybe there's some sort of end in the future. The bottom line, though, to answer your question, Whitney, if you find that you are incapable of complying with these communications and your obligations to your clients, you need to do a handoff to someone. TLAP, Erica, TLAP, that is one of the greatest places to go as well. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of not going at it alone, to find allies, to find mentors, to find people that if they don't fully understand you, at least they appreciate you.
Absolutely. And Erica is going to talk to us a little bit about TLAP. I know that we've mentioned it a few times, but one of the other disciplinary rules that I feel like a lot of attorneys don't know about, or maybe just isn't given enough credit, is the fact that if we are seeing professional misconduct in opposing counsel, in our other colleagues, that instead of reporting them to the State Bar of Texas, we can have a little empathy for each other and a little bit of understanding for each other. And so there is this great Texas disciplinary rule, 8.03C, just to reference it, that allows us as attorneys to report the misconduct or the concern to an approved peer assistance program instead of a disciplinary authority. And so, Erica, I'd really love to have you share with our audience about the TLAP resources that fall under this, and how a little bit of compassion really can go a long way, especially in our stressful profession.
Well, first of all, Michael, I love that steak story. And today I'm medium rare. Just to let y'all know, I'm medium rare, which I think is pretty good. I'll take it. The Texas Lawyers Assistance Program, if you are a law student, lawyer, or judge, if you took one class in law school, you have access to our program. And as has already been mentioned, it is where you can satisfy your reporting duty that you have when you come across a colleague who might be impaired. I want to say, trust your gut. We make our living off of our guts as attorneys. We usually have really good guts. And I know y'all love and know a local hero, Terry Bentley Hill, who says, stop minding your own business. By the time it's on your heart to call us, because I think we tend to, either if it's you personally wanting to reach out to TLAP, or if you're worried about someone, go on ahead and give us a call. Because what we will do, we have 3 staff members, all attorneys, all have, one is an LPC attorney. The other 2 of us have mental health education, master's education. What we will do then is usually what happens is we will reach out to the person that you're worried about. As Justice Mulberg has said, we will reach out to people and let them know what we do. And I'm going to tell you what we do. We have peer assistance. That is what saved me. When I was in the throes of my depression and I abused alcohol as well, my therapist told me I was going to be fine. My mama told me I was going to be fine. But it wasn't until another lawyer who had been through what I had been through, who had come out on the other end that said, you're going to be fine, that I totally believed it. Because just like the people that are testifying here today about their own experience with depression, those are the people that I listen to. So we have a peer support system. If you are, we can connect you with someone, or the person that you're worried about with someone who has experience with a particular mental health issue they might be dealing with. Another thing we have is, I call it a lawyer-tested database of providers. What that means is lawyers who have gone to someone personally, not use them as experts, but lawyers who have gone to a counselor, a psychiatrist, and they have liked that person, that professional, they will call us and say, this is a great therapist in Dallas, and we will record that. And that's great, because when I started being, really tending to my mental health, the phone book is this thick with people. And sometimes it's hard to figure out who to go to. So something you can do is call us and say, hey, I'd love to know, have a list of providers that deal with trauma. And we can forward that to you, people that have come recommended to us. Another thing, we have 2 more things that I think are really important. Actually 3, I lied. Lawyers, we do that. One thing we have is in the moment counseling. This is kind of new to TLAP, but I think it is so important, especially with law students, who may not have the finances or the insurance to get, which I'll get to that too, to get mental health care. You can call our number 24 hours a day and we can connect you with a therapist via phone. I've used that service because even though I see a regular therapist, sometimes my next appointment with her is not for another week. And I have something on my heart and in my head right now that I want to talk about. So we can connect you for free to In the Moment counseling. We also have wonderful group support. Texas Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. They meet in every major city in Texas. Right now, everybody's on Zoom, those meetings. Those are lawyers who meet confidentially that are struggling with mental health issues. I go to the Tuesday Austin meeting. It's also Lawyers in Recovery go to those meetings. If you go to our website, tlaphelps.org, there's a support toolbox, a little green rectangle. I know that ages me. I'm sure there's a name for that, but just click on that green rectangle and scroll down and you'll see all those meetings. You can just click on the Zoom link. The last thing I will say, if finances are standing in the way for you to get help, we have access to a trust. Please call us. If you don't have health insurance, if you have health insurance, but it doesn't cover mental health stuff, if you have health insurance, but the deductible is so high, you might as well not even have it, call us because we have access to a trust. We can get $3,000 for you to be paid directly to the provider of your choice. Counseling, psychiatrist. We also have trusts available for inpatient therapy for substance use and outpatient. So that's basically what we do. It's a whole lot of stuff. We are here to help you. We are here to make it work. We are a one-way street. We exist to get you help only. We are protected by confidentiality. We do not talk to anybody at the state bar about anything. That's it. That's what we do. And I want to say our number really quickly. And then because I want y'all to have it, you know what? I'll also put it here I'll put it in the chat, but it's 1-800-343-TLAP, TLAP. You can text or call 24 hours a day. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Erica. And you, do you happen to know off the top of your head, sorry to put you on the spot, when the Dallas meetings are? Because I know that isn't there a Dallas TLAP meeting time as well?
I think it's Thursday at noon.
Okay, I'll double check while another panelist is talking, but I think that's really helpful to know. I had no idea about the trust. And so, yeah, do not let finances be a barrier.
Call us.
Absolutely. And then if you just want to drop the number in the chat for all the panelists and attendees so that they have it. And Artishla, I know that you have been moderating, but I would love to hear from you about resources for law students that are available and any helpful information that you can share with our audience today, because Artishla is a law student. I know that you want to guess that because of her maturity and her poise, but she really reached out to me and wanted to be a part of this All Rise program and has been amazing and helping. And I would love to hear, because we have so many law students as members of the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers, kind of your perspective, Artishla. What can you share with us?
So this is like the perfect time to have this conversation because I am in the middle of finals and I am running on my very high functioning, I have to say this material, I have to get this information learned so that I can pass my finals and continue into my third year. I am so grateful for my school. I go to University of North Texas at Dallas College of Law. Our Dean of Student Affairs, Dean Rabinowitz, is very fundamental in ensuring that we have things that we can do, like he sent plants out to us, or they sent us like tea or workout equipment throughout the pandemic. And then beforehand, they made sure that they had like little mindfulness things before finals or provided resources to us. We also have a therapist on the campus as well. I see her, I love her. And it's something that, you know, we don't have to pay for, it's free. And even if you are an alumni, you can still continue to go and receive those resources. My background's in child protective services and juvenile justice field, so I've been exposed to social work and mental health concerns. I realized very early on, just because of myself and how I can compartmentalize different things and like, oh, I don't want to feel sad today, so I need to do other things, that I needed to go to therapy and I need to see like how I can get that assistance and like get myself together, because we are a helping profession and then we also get secondary trauma because you're seeing things that you don't see on a daily basis and you become immune to it, but then there's some things that you do need to process and deal with. I've also went to TLAP because I have ADHD and I also go through depressive episodes. So I need to make sure that I went and got assistance and got help with making sure I got my Adderall every month, because if I don't have that, me in law school would not be a thing. I will be distracted with everything else. And with the pandemic, I made sure that I worked out and I got the equipment and things of those nature, because we're in law school, we are expected to perform very high. We are comparing ourselves to our classmates or to other students at other law schools, or even with social media, which I just think is low key the worst thing sometimes. Is you're seeing other law schools experience, law students' experiences, and you're like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. They got this grade, and you're talking about these things. And it really gets you deep down into your own negative thoughts about yourself and how you think things should go about. I have a group of 3 girls, it's 4 of us all together, that I love them. I tell them like, hey, this is going on in my life, or this is not going on in my life, and reach out on them because they're experiencing it as well. They're also other minority law students as well, so they get it. We're in these trenches together and we try to assist. I would just make sure, get a mentor, talk to someone like Whitney or Michael or Justice Moberg or Erica, and that who are being open, honest, and vulnerable about their experiences and how they are coming through, because it's a stigma that shouldn't be a stigma, and they're always going to be here to assist you because they've seen it, they have experience, and that they want to make sure that this gets destigmatized and assist you throughout your law school career and your legal career. And we are moving into the area right now where we're going to be like transitioning back into the world and moving throughout and trying to figure out how we're going to transition. Shatai, do you have any tips for anyone of how they should go about transitioning, you know, with being vaccinated or not vaccinated? People are wanting to go back outside, do picnics, things like that. How can people start approaching those scenarios?
Yeah, definitely. So we are, it's crazy times. It's odd times, and people are getting vaccinated. The world, so to speak, is opening back up. Just really, trust your gut. Do what you feel is comfortable for you. There's no right or wrong. Just the main thing is to make sure that you are, doing things that are meaningful and fulfilling to you, and at whatever pace, whatever degree that means for you. So that self-care, if now you're able to incorporate more social settings, more public settings, things like that. We're going to be having meetings in person again shortly, and big group meetings and activities. And so just using your judgment and talking about things, if you have anxieties, if you have worries, if you have questions, chances are, well, not chances, so do a million other people. So ask them, and, just share how you're feeling about the world as it's kind of changing and opening back up. Be flexible, really access these resources. As Erica was saying more about what TLAP does, I was just over here in awe. What an amazing program. Definitely take advantage of that. I had a list of resources to share as well, but TLAP really it's like a one-stop shop. It has everything you need. I would definitely take advantage of that. And also another thing that Erica said was the peer support. I can't stress enough that, normalizing what you're going through, what you're experiencing is so important. I don't have the exact statistics on hand, and I know in the law world that's big, but also just knowing that peer support shows tremendous success rates, as opposed to just doing therapy or just doing treatment alone. I also work in the substance abuse realm. And so, it's not just therapy, but it's the group programming. It's the group support, the 12-step meetings. Research shows, for example, those who take part in therapy and in addition, a 12-step like AA program have much more rates of success and healing than those who don't. So, for depression, join a support group, talking to people who aren't professionals, who aren't paid supports, who have been through the same, similar, or going through, can just be so empowering. So definitely tapping into that and just normalizing it.
And Justice Mulberg, I know that you said that you've made some anonymous referrals over, but how else do you think a younger lawyer or an attorney should come to you if they are experiencing those struggles and approaching their depression and trying to make sure that they can do their job at a level that is suitable for them?
Well, let me backtrack just a minute. Michael first used these two words that I'm real big on, and that's confidant, and ally. I feel that those are so very important. And Ms. Joyner and I know Erica have both hit on the concepts of peer support. Those are very important things, in my view, over the years in combating this. One of the things, let's take Dallas County as an example. There are many lawyers out there, many of them young, who are very familiar with the judges, the trial judges who are on the bench. They know which ones of those are empathetic creatures, which ones aren't. If you are having a serious problem and you don't know what to do, you don't know who to turn to or where to go, you can approach those people like me and say, Judge, look, I got this problem. And it's not curing itself, and I'm not curing it. In fact, I think I'm making it worse. What do you think I ought to do? And most of those judges are going to take that seriously, take it to heart, and help you as best as they can, whether that's with a referral to Erica and TLAP or whether it's some other thing. So don't hesitate. We all have to, and I go back to this, we have to destigmatize this whole area. Because if we can cure a broken arm, her broken head, we can cure this.
Well said.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important, especially on the peer support part. Erica, what do you think is the hardest thing about living with depression and then also trying to perform and work hard to the standards that are being set for you? And what are your experiences with making sure that you're getting your self-care in and that you're taking care of yourself?
Well, for me, I'll tell you that it's stigma. I mean, we've all said it a million times today, but I'm going to say it again. And as a female litigator, I was fighting the stigma that a lot of women that are watching this fight, and that's that we're over emotional, that we're paranoid, that we overreact. And I thought that if I came forward with my depression, my suicidal ideations, that my career would be over before it started. And so it was that stigma that really weighed on me to come forward and really get help. And so programs like this one that y'all are doing today remove that layer. I mean, they're so important. So programs like this, where you have Justice Mulberg and Michael Hurst, these big time people come and say, hey, look, come to me. I've been through this. I mean, this is how we change the culture. It starts from up top. It starts from people, it starts from partners in law firms saying, hey, I've been to a therapist, no big deal. Go for it. It helped me. Here's how it helped me. There is a place for vulnerability in this profession. At my law practice, back in those days, 3 years ago, it excelled once I tapped into who I was. Once I stopped trying to be someone else. Once I stopped trying to be, there's a place for it. You connect with clients more when you understand what you're going through. Michael's already touched on that. I cannot tell you enough. And Whitney has too. I have improved in every sense of the word by getting help. I'm a better lawyer. I'm a better person. I'm a better daughter. Don't ask my dad. He may say differently. Justice Mulberg's smiling. He knows my dad. But you know, I just highly encourage you to get help, because here's another thing. The good news is depression is so treatable. It is so treatable. Most people who just attend 6 to 8 talk therapy sessions, they're done. That's all they need. Some people like me, and you know, I needed talk therapy and medication. But that's what's such a shame about all this to me. I hate to use the word shame, but you know, what's it's just so manageable. And just, you know, we need to work on getting that stigma, you know, peeled away, because this is such a manageable mental health issue. Depression is just so manageable. And we're all, and just about everyone on this panel is showing you it is.
And it sounds like you're hitching at just being truly authentic to who you are and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And Michael, I know you talked about this earlier, that once you started being authentic, it transformed who you were, how your practice was going. What did you notice specifically with actually going and getting therapy and going to get assistance and being authentic to who you are? How did that help you in the long run so far?
Well, thank you. I was actually going to touch upon that. And I thought what Erica just said was great. Embracing authenticity over the machismo, if you will, that I was describing a little while ago about what you think you need to be and how you think you need to be in order to be successful as a lawyer. Justice Mulberg will tell you that's what judges, that's what juries want to see. They want to see authenticity. They don't want to see people coming in the courtroom and beating their chests. And I just think that makes it relatable. I want to say one thing, diverging just a little bit, because depression is often about stuckness. You get stuck. I know it was stuckness for me. And one thing, and I'll mention this, I drink alcohol. Most of y'all know that. But alcohol is very dangerous, and it can largely be, it's largely part of our lifestyle and our culture as lawyers. And you have to realize that even in moderation, it only masks and even contributes to the depression. It messes with our meds. We talked about that earlier. It is ritualized and accepted, but you know, it's difficult to see sometimes how dangerous we might be self-medicating. So I wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about going back to the authenticity and the recognition of the depression. Back in 2017, some of the things were coming to a head in my personal life, being told I was going to have to pull my son from the school that he loves so much and send him to a wilderness program and off to a therapeutic boarding school. You know, for heaven's sakes, I couldn't take care of my own child. And my therapist watched me come in, you know, removing my happy fake book facade, and finally said, Michael, you know, you need to be on meds. And many times I've thought about going to who was going to be president after me, Laura Benitez-Geisler, my good friend, and asking her to take over the DBA presidency a year early. And then something happened, and this was very transformative to me, and it still gets me choked up when I talk about it. But I was being introduced at my Dallas Bar inaugural ball, and Rob Crane was you know, saying all the things you do in an introduction, and then I got surprised with a video message from my son, and just choked me up. And everyone's looking around like, hey, yeah, where is Michael's son? He's not here. Why isn't he here at the inaugural ball? And I talked to people afterwards, and I said, you know what? I'm just we're really not the fake book family that we portray ourselves as. And I do think, I don't necessarily believe in the devil, but if I did, I think it would be social media. But everybody puts on this great facade on there, and it's not authentic. It's very fake. And I said, you know, here's what's really going on in my life right now, and it's not all roses. And it was amazing how many people came to me and said, I'm so glad you said that. You know, despite what I put on Facebook and Instagram and everything else, I've got a son that's a drug addict, and he's often over here. I've got a daughter that is suffering from mental health or disciplinary issues. She's at military school, and that was an unintended platform for my DBA presidency, and it was cathartic, I found, to share some of my experiences like I am today, and trying to help others by letting them know that we aren't alone. I wrote articles about removing the stigma of mental illness and working with people, mentors, as we talked about, Justice Mulberg said, out, the recognized allies, confidants, mentors. And you mentioned Terry Bentley Hill, who's kind of at the forefront of so much of that. She's a hero of mine. Kelly Rensel, John McShane, those people have blazed trails on opening up about mental health. Quick story though, because it does relate to those of us who are trial lawyers. The DOL asked me to do a trial skills boot camp demonstration when I was president, and during, it was a voir dire presentation, and as those of you who know, when you're picking a jury, you want to get the jury to open up, and by getting them to open up, you got to usually tell them something personal about yourself. And I kind of went on a limb a little bit, and I said, let me tell you something about myself. I've been diagnosed with depression, and if this were a case that was about, for instance, an employee being fired for mental health issues and having to bring a claim because of that, I wouldn't be a good juror for that case. Just something to try to get the people to open up. Interestingly enough, 3 people from that program contacted me afterwards. 2 of whom I had coffee, one of whom was in a very bad way. And it just goes to show the power of letting people know they're not alone. Terry Bentley Hill just says sometimes it's as simple as, hey, how are you? Just tell me how you are. That makes a difference. Young attorneys, we've talked about the machismo concept. The incongruency that my therapist talks about, that I spoke about a little earlier, is something that we all need to watch out for. 2020, COVID made everything, mental illness, depression, magnified. The macho culture being in the office was something, and I'm very much a fan of people being in the office, partially because I need to be around people, but the messaging on being in the office is very important too. And not that it's a machismo thing, but it's a collaborative thing, and it's a better way to be mentored about being in the office. So I would just conclude with this. The last 4 years, I've lost 4 very, very close friends, 2 of whom are lawyers, and the other 2 were also professionals. And we need mentors, we need advocates, and we need allies, and they're out there. Find them, call Erica, talk to Justice Mulberg. I love hearing about the courts, but find those allies, mentors, and advocates.
Thank you so much for being so open, Michael, everybody on this panel. I think that it's really, really impactful. And I know that we've talked about the pandemic, but I know we're running a little bit over, but I would be remiss if we did not talk about another really important issue that is affecting us, our communities, which is all the social justice issues that we're seeing. And I would love to have Artishla and Shatai talk a little bit about how depression you're seeing or feeling yourself, how that's being impacted by everything going on with the issues such as George Floyd, with the Chauvin trial, and how you're dealing with that and what you're seeing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shatai.
So that has definitely been another component to the last year and a half or so in the midst of a pandemic as well, all of the social justice actions and, just turning on news, scrolling through your social media feeds. And speaking from a personal experience, just as, a minority therapist in coming to work while you are hearing these things that are affecting you so deeply. I know, Artishla, you talked about secondary trauma, and you don't have to be there to feel the effects of something terrible that has happened. So having somebody that you can talk to, feeling like you can express yourself is important. There's been times when I've went to work at, different places, and I felt alone. I felt like I couldn't really speak on it. Or if I did, what are my colleagues going to say? Are they going to agree or disagree? And it just kind of, again, that cortisol, that stress response, it just sparks all of that. So being able to just have that ally that you can talk to, and also, living in your authenticity, being able to feel safe expressing when things are heavy on your mind is important, and not just keeping all of that in, because that can definitely contribute to anxiety, depression, just mental health in general.
And to piggyback off of what Shataya said, I personally have one of my best friends works at a restaurant that is right in George Floyd Square. So I have been very pivotal to understanding what's going on there and understand what's going on with him. And then being a law student studying the Constitution, federal criminal procedure, you are being swarmed with this every single day. There is a period of times that it's extremely hard, but I really believe in being authentically true to who I am. So I speak my opinion and I really don't care who gets offended by it or not, because it's important for me to say how I'm feeling, what's going on, and then being able to be an ally to other people with, if they're feeling depression from seeing this, or they're looking at social media every single day, or if they just have questions. Because ultimately, why mental health is a stigma is because we want to push it down and not talk about it and bury it deep and feel like it's shame. But the only way to unstigmatize it is to talk about it, to be vulnerable and to be authentic. This past year with everything, with any social justice issue, with going to class and seeing that everything with Breonna Taylor, it is extremely hard. But I would say for everyone, you need to be a counterpart and you need to understand how to address an issue, talk about an issue, and be vulnerable with everyone, because at the end of the day, we all are seeing it because we were living in a bubble. We all have phones, we all have social media, we all compare. And so it's important to just make sure that you become an ally, talk to people, and be authentic. I know that for me this past year, a lot of law students have come to me and asked me questions and try to get their opinion across or try to help see a different side. And I've always been myself open to it because, hey, we need someone to talk to and a conversation needs to start someplace. So just make sure, be authentic, listen to people first, discuss the differences of opinion, and try to not judge or make a decision about someone just because they're uneducated or they don't really know what's going on. And that speaks to social justice issues and mental health concerns.
Absolutely. And just one last thing with that, as it relates to mental health, social justice, and law, listen with the intent of learning something and understanding someone else's point of view. It doesn't have to be about who's right. It doesn't have to be about changing your opinion, but just listen to people when they're telling you how they feel, what they're going through.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here today. I know we went a little bit over, but I just want to extend a huge thank you to every single one of our panelists. You all are instrumental in destigmatizing these issues, bringing awareness, and hopefully providing much needed resources to our audience and other people who may watch this later. Just as a quick reminder for our audience, for those of you who are still hanging in there, we will have 2 more programs this year. We'll have one on addiction and we'll have another one on suicide. So please stay tuned, follow the Facebook page. We also have an Instagram account with DAYL. And then additionally, just like Erica was mentioning about TLAB, DAYL, we have started compiling a database as well for mental health providers that have been vetted by our members. And then we also provide information if we have it on whether or not they're covered by certain insurances. So we are happy to help you guys. Please reach out to, I'm sure any of the panelists would be more than happy to hear from you and talk to you. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And please take care of yourself and remember that you're not alone.
Thank you.